Hello and welcome everyone to Ananke's Festival of Literature. I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Francesco Verso to this event. Welcome, Francesco.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Sabin, for the invitation.
Today we're talking about uh, uh, a topic that is actually relatively new for me as well, and it is so fascinating. And doing a bit of research on it as well. Not just fascinating, I think uh, something that gives you a motivation about the future as well. So thank you, Francesco, for uh, honoring us with your insight, your feedback, and talking about this very important topic. But first, I'd like to say a few words about Francesco as well. So, Francesco Verso is a multiple award science fiction writer and editor, three Europa Awards, two Urania Awards, two Italia Awards, one Galaxy Award, and one Marco Polo Award for the promotion of Chinese science fiction. He has published An- Antidote, Omani,
Humani? Yes, yes.
Omani, Omani, Adol. Apologies for my pronunciation, but I'm going to read all of these. And Francesco, you can correct me. Next, Human, Blood Hunters, Future Spotting, Ecolution, and the first European solar punk novel, The Roamers, made of the bulldogs and no slash mad slash land. His works have been translated into many languages and published in the USA and the UK, China, Brazil, Italy, France, and India. He also works as editor and publisher of Future Fiction, a multicultural project dedicated to scouting and publishing the best world science fiction in translation from more than 40 countries and 40 languages with a mission to decolonize the future. From 2019, he's the honorary director of the Fishing Fortress Science Fiction Academy of Chongqing, where he runs the Future Fiction Writing Workshop. He may be found at www.futurefiction.org. So, welcome.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction.
Uh, so, let's first begin with the most important question of all, uh, which is what kind of reception has solar punk received in the global south?
Yeah. First of all, I would like to kind of describe or give some idea of what is solar punk. Some people might have heard about cyberpunk, which was very popular, and it is still very popular as an aesthetic over the last 40 years now. Cyberpunk was born during the late 80s and trying to describe actually the kind of present time that we are living, made of algorithm, virtual reality, big corporations, exploitations of the environment, and exploitations of labor forces. So, in a very cynical and nihilistic view of the future. This is exactly the kind of representation that, if you remember the opening scene of Blade Runner, very famous movie by Ridley Scott, it would say Los Angeles 2019. Well, that future is now our past. And that means that cyberpunk is now the current infrastructure of our mainstream reality, made of capitalism, made of geographic exploitation, made of virtual reality, made of AI and databases, information technologies, and all these sort of futuristic things which are now our daily life, at least for a big part of the Western world. So because of these sort of um, let's say, repetition of these sort of futures that were always sort of destroying the world, creating dystopia, telling negative narratives, always advocating a sort of post-apocalyptic scenario where just a bunch of people will survive and the rest of us will just die. From especially from the global south, emerged a number of narratives that are trying to say a different story, trying to say that we need to change the actual mainstream narrative, and um, oppose this sort of pessimistic, cynical view of the future, and propose something more optimistic, something more cooperative, something more hopeful also. Especially this sort of view of the futures where humanity, technology, and nature coexist in, I wouldn't say an harmonic scenario, but a less catastrophic and a less dystopic one. They are trying to really change the way we think about the future, especially in the very hard time that we lived with the pandemic and with the ongoing warfare and the ongoing sort of, let's say, not very democratic state of the world. Okay. The idea is that the future is not written. And so we have um, something to say, in the sense that we are, I mean, when I say we, I mean the people, the majority of the people have a couple of very powerful things to do. One is their purchasing power, uh, that they can allocate in different manners. And the other one is to refuse the current one-way globalization, one-way capitalism, and try to build bottom-up strategies to deconstruct these sort of approaches. I know it's kind of difficult. So solar punk, which was born in Brazil and then spread in many parts of the global East. And then, of course, there is a solar punk in the West, but it's a bit different from the one from the global South. So when there was this narrative, a lot of people embraced it as a, finally, as a change, because something that comes from the global South that has the roots in the sort of quests and missions and cries for change that are emerging over the last, I wouldn't say, I mean, I could go back to centuries, of course, with colonialism and imperialism, but let's focus on the last, let's say, 60 years after the widespread globalization, that has, of course, had very huge impact on the environment and the social structure in the global South. And so this sort of um, shifting uh, and proposing something, not refusing the current narrative, but proposing something different, is very powerful for me. So when it comes to disentangle from the global view of the future, these narratives can introduce other identities, marginalized communities, a lot of female writers, a lot of other languages, a lot of other traditions, the way we distribute wealth, the way we consider the idea of wealth, which is often not just a monetary return, but it can include and encompass many other sorts of richnesses. So this is a very big change that, especially for countries and tradition that have not been born with capitalism, because the US was born in at least the United States that we know. I'm not talking about the time before decolonization of the US, but that country just knows one single economy. But the rest of the world have developed and strived for many, many, many centuries without this sort of capitalism. So we know, and I'm talking as Italian, so coming from around 3,000 years civilization, we know that there are other things. There's been other pasts, and there could be, in this way, other futures.
That's really interesting. And while I was doing this research and read about cyberpunk and solar punk, um, and again, as a novice, I'm asking you this question, but one thing that came to my mind was the yin and yang, two things maybe complementing and one another, and the synergy created because of these two forces. Does that make any sense?
Well, let's say that solar punk tries to recreate a shattered harmony. This harmony is often seen as a masculine, positivistic, hierarchic sort of approach, while for a very long time, societies were shaped in other ways, having even sometimes even matriarchal societies. The idea is that in order to push the sort of Western development, a lot of rights have been shattered, a lot of civil rights has been uh, neglected, denied completely. And so the cost of this sort of progress has been paid by one part of the world. So this part of the world is now saying that um, we are at the very complicated moment. We could embrace the same sort of development that the West had. Think about China and India, for example. What would happen if their consumption levels would get to the same sort of level of the West, but Solarpunk is trying to say maybe we could go another way. Maybe the sort of development that the West had, just hiring the consumption levels of goods that are artificially made as relevant, well, probably they're not, having the third microwave or having the third car or having more and more of stuff that you are just producing for the sake of it, and then not caring for the black side of overconsumption, which is over junk production, right? Maybe there is another way. Maybe we could introduce other values. Maybe we could introduce other ways of considering what is the development, which is not just a measure of GDP, a measure of gross domestic product, but it could be HDI, the Human Development Index. So, for example, we know that the higher the education of women, the higher and the better is the condition of the society. So these things are strictly correlated. And the richness and the wealth of a country doesn't pass just from the number of medicine that you produce. Because if you produce a lot of medicine, it means that a lot of people are sick. So these things are kind of how can I say, um, shedding some doubts about the idea of the development that these countries could go through. It's tough. I'm not saying that it's easy. So solar punk takes the legacy of cyberpunk. The term punk means fighting, means that they are not accepting the set of values that the current the current, let's say, bourgeois society is trying to sell us. So um, it is a way of getting the ancient wisdom back into the conversation, trying to introduce the sort of values that have been completely neglected or completely ignored and made invisible by capitalism, right? That values everything just by the capacity of being productive and being more efficient and monetize everything. But many of the values that we have forgotten do not have a monetary, let's say, mm, comparison or I mean, for you, if you take the work that the women have been doing for centuries for caring about the others,
Yes.
that has never been accounted for money. But how much value is that? You know, so solar punk is a counterintuitive way of approach to the future, saying that we shouldn't buy the easy, consumistic, comfort zone sort of solution that many times uh, Western view of the future try to sell us.
Yes, because that is all about, it's unsustainable as well. And, you're commodifying, you're commodifying everything. Um, so yeah, that's really interesting. One question that comes to my mind, and let me just, because I've written it down,
Yeah.
and I think uh, so I'll begin with what is prosumerism, and
Okay.
how do we, like you say, embrace it? How
Yeah.
do we empower and begin to empower non-privileged communities, the subaltern, especially those living in the periphery, living in regions, who possess, these resources which are actually being drained,
Yes.
and they're being exhausted and not by themselves.
Yes. Yes. That is the exactly the problem, and that is exactly where solar punk has a lot to say when it comes to agriculture, manufacturing, distribution, energy production, and a lot of other things. So solar punk is a sort of platform to be adapted to your current problem. It could be many things when it comes to architecture, design, transportation. It can have something to say about many things if you consider the uh, the fundamentals. Okay, so the fundamentals is these, that we have been expropriated of the means of production. When I was young and I was buying a PC in the 90s, I could change the DIMM, the slots, the hard drive, the processor, the motherboard, the case, whatever. I was, um, let's say, entitled to open the box, change the pieces, and do it, and fix it, and repair it, and upgrade it. That means that I own something because I can repair it. But when there is one object like this that is closed, and as soon as there is a problem, you just throw it away and buy a new one, this uh, deprives me the right to repair. So if I cannot repair it, I don't really own it. I'm just a user. So prosumerism is a way of becoming a producer and a consumer at the same time. That means that I can produce my own technology and I can consume my own technology. And in this way, I first of all learn how technology works. That means that I can empower my community and I can give my community the tools, um, not to eat the fish, but to fish directly in the lake. So that is the difference. So solar punk tries to say, look, you could build your own solar panel and you could install it in your own on the roof of your house. There are beautiful examples like the Barefoot College in India, where a number of women go there, and in just 6 months they can learn to create a solar panel with very low budget materials, so that whatever they do, whatever they want to start, whatever they want to create an enterprise, a small business, whatever, they have the power to use, I mean, the solar power, the energy to jumpstart any sort of project. That is a total shift in the kind of attitude. Oh, I'm here. I don't know. The future must come to me, right? Someone must help me. No, if you own the tools to create your own devices, then you create your own future. That is the change in the kind of attitude. And the same thing goes for agriculture, for example. You if you have uh, a sort of terrace or a roof garden or something you can grow, there's no need to always go and buy ultra processed foods at the supermarket. Maybe you can start growing the stuff with your neighborhood, sharing the seeds, growing your stuff, and maybe use the drone to send uh, the vegetables and the fruit from one balcony to the other, one house to the other, creating a sort of decentralized supply chain in the neighborhoods, and then from the neighborhoods it can grow. But the idea of solar punk, it is not related to the growth for the sake of growing, right? Maybe we have been taught the wrong lesson. Maybe there is a dimension that we need to respect, and it doesn't have to scale up to these huge, humongous structures that we see. For example, they are putting animals and slaughter them and grow them in a very, very, really horrible way. I'm not, let's say, so much against the consumption of meat, but I am very much against the consumption of industrialized meat. I've seen many places in the Western world where these animals are not animals anymore. They are just food uh, commodities born to be killed as fast as possible. So it's this idea of reducing the complexity of the world to simple um, uh, resources to be monetized that Solarpunk opposes and tries to propose something. So the idea is not to make a revolution, which, doesn't, if you look at history, didn't favor the majority of the people, but instead is building an alternative within this world, so that this world collapse on the very basis that uh, are, is are keeping is keeping this world alive. So it's like uh, moving the population, moving one person at the time to an alternative that should be sustainable, should be feasible, of course. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it can, be like that. But as soon as you are aware that there is another way, another direction that you can go, maybe that's the first step to transform your present time.
I agree. It's never easy because again, when it comes to the powers that be, there's you know there's a huge amount of effort that you know will take place, or it's difficult.
Well, there
Yeah,
are forces. There are
exactly,
forces that
exactly,
are going in the opposite direction.
exactly. And two things that come to my mind, when you're talking about consumption as well, and how uh, animals are treated, and should we look at the animal kingdom, like for instance, the lion, right? When he's not hungry, even a gazelle passes by, and the lion doesn't do anything.
Yes.
So that's one thing. And you were talking about change, uh, and owning it. When you own something, and sustainable practices happen when you give power to the people. And uh, especially because when you give that power to the people of, producing it, being a presume,
Presume.
yeah. So producing it and using it, you know when you're producing it, your environment as well. And that is how sustainability comes in place. If it's a black box, and I'll say it, Apple is like a black box, right?
Of course,
So yeah. So so you're not the producer, you're not owning it, you're just using it and you're throwing it away, so it's not sustainable as well. So
no, no, these are externalities. This is the way capitalism has not paid the cost to nature and to the environment. They buy low nature, appropriating it uh, in countries where you know they don't have a right, and they dump it on the same countries without paying any compensation. So that's easy, it's easy to make money in this way because basically you are stealing resources and you are dumping uh, externalities onto people that cannot defend themselves. So often this sort of system has been uh, protected by weapons, by armies, by guns and and armies. That's history.
absolutely, yeah. So my next question to you is that, in this multipolar world that we are living in today,
Mhm.
with the powers and the establishment hard at play when it comes to exploitation and oppression, um, where do we begin to work for a climate, focusing on human impact on the environment, as well as challenge uh, even climate doomerism, as well as those who oppose that narrative of doomerism.
Yeah, of course, as I said, the change must come um, from the bottom up. Okay, so it's about doing things in a different way, not accepting the easy, comfortable solution. Of course, there's a price to pay because if you consider, for example, the production of food at the moment and the production of energy. Uh, the poorest people get the worst food. Um, and that is the cheapest one, and it's the worst kind of food. So it's always about a sort of a level yourself. You are unique. You are entitled of your own desires, and nobody can tell you what you have to do. Nobody can tell you nothing, right? These sort of atomization of the individuals is exactly a strategy to divide us and to make us feel that our
True,
neighbor,
true.
our friend, he doesn't really want what we want. He's like, so that is the narrative that, as divide et impera was the strategy of the Roman Empire. You divide the states and they will not fight against you. Or if they do, they will not be strong enough so that you can fight them back. So this is the idea. The idea is that if now we can buy all that we want on Amazon, but we are not happy in any way, we need to rebuild the network of our solidarity, of our mutual support, so that we build a community that is resilient. And if we need something, we don't buy it on Amazon, but we ask it to our community. Of course, I'm talking about a progressive state of transformation, which passed through, okay, who has a field, who has the knowledge of building a solar panel. But there is, for example, a website called Apropedia, is a sort of Wikipedia of technology, where not really technology, but is a sort of um, let's say, Jugar repository, where people share their knowledge. Okay, I can fix this thing. I can fix this engine. I can make make your bike work. I know how to repower a battery or stuff like that. They share. I can desalinization of water, uh, very practical things. And on this website, you can go and check the solution to your problem, made by people that are sharing their knowledge and their wisdom. So I believe that knowledge is incremental. That means that if we close knowledge and wisdom with a copyright, we create the conditions to be exploited. But if we remove this and let the knowledge be free, we all benefit from the spreading and the positive waves of transformation of this wisdom that I'm really I really believe that mutual support is much stronger than competition.
Absolutely. Be open source.
Be open source,
Yeah,
definitely. Yes,
yeah.
that's the right thing.
So the other day, you reminded me of a conversation that we were having about this village up north in Pakistan, and people there, how the community, at one point in time they were, exchanging. One had wheat, the other one had flour, and they still are okay and everything, but they were thriving and everything was done, in exchange of things. Now what happened is, you know the younger generation has gone out to work in cosmopolitan cities.
Yes.
So when they're coming back, they're buying the very stuff they used to exchange, which is ironic.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah. So,
But
you're actually paying money for something that you were doing, in a but, in a more sustainable way as well.
yeah. Yes, yes. It's a bit tricky. Yes, you need to be focused and realize all these pitfalls and kind of tricks. I think there is, we are living in a very dynamic period of time now. Maybe it's always been like that in the history of mankind, but I'm particularly interested in the development of AI because, yes, now it's centralized, but as soon as China released DeepSeek with an open source code, we might benefit from this is just the dawn of a very, shaky period. But what would happen if we could have our own open source, AI that we can train and develop, and it could be a support. Of course, this goes in the same direction of starting to talk about the universal basic income, which it starts to be relevant when you imagine that automation will probably put out of work millions of people over the next 10 years. So what will these people will do? So if you need to keep the level of consumptions. Because if you remove 10 million people from the market collapse and the companies collapse and the rich are not rich anymore. So they don't have their consumers anymore. So they will need to keep these. They cannot starve their own consumers because otherwise they are doomed themselves. So this is interesting because we would need to have a sort of universal basic income or a sort of compensation for the automation of AI.
So, do you think, and I'm just, because there are a lot of conversation and a lot of anxiety
Yeah.
around AI, but do you think that it is hyped? Why I'm saying that is, revolution, like industrial revolutions of any kind, you know, it has been done and I'm not minimizing the fear and with all due respect to you know uh, the workers who are actually doing that, but hard reality is when these revolutions come, you know that's what happens. But human we as humans, we are great at adopting and adapting as well.
Mhm.
So is there is this anxiety caused by the tech powers that they're, by the
Yes.
big tech, just to keep in control and keep in line? Uh, because that's what I feel. If you have, like, DeepSeek was a game, when it came, it was a changer, because not because it was it was relatively cheaper to make or whatever, but there was an other alternative narrative being created. That
Yes.
was the game changing thing. So
Yes. 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 I totally agree. Of course, the anxiety is related also to in a way ignorance in the sense of not knowing, ignoring something. So something that I don't know uh, puts me in a sort of uh, cautious sort of attitude, so that I I'm I don't know if I will get, my salary over the next 10 months. I cannot pay the mortgage. I cannot plan my life, because when these things are become uncertainties, then there's a big question mark on all the decisions that I'm taking. Can I buy a house? Can I buy a car? Can I buy some? Or, you know, so that's the question. Introducing the structural anxiety is what makes us the perfect worker and the perfect consumer, being afraid of a change because we are not sure about the outcome of the alternative. um it's not easy. It's a complicated psychological game, but I think that um especially in the global south, where the tradition are different. Of course, it takes just 2 generations to wipe the history away and to forget about everything. Uh, I want to believe. I want to believe that an alternative to the current Capitalocene, I call it Capitalocene, the age of capitalism, uh, exists. I mean, we lived in this sort of capitalistic age for 300, 400 centuries, but for a very long time, we didn't know what it was. Yes, we had money, but that wasn't covering all possible aspects of our life. It wasn't so pervasive and invasive in our reality. So I hope that we can find a better uh, equilibrium, because at the moment is really bad. So these are all cries coming from outside the fortress of the West in order to mm, make them understand, if possible, but I'm very pessimistic about this, that that the situation must change. And I think that the change will come from outside the fortress.
I think The problem is not that they understand, they're not willing to
Oh yeah,
read.
they're
Yeah,
not willing.
yeah, yeah.
They're not willing.
Uh, yeah, yeah. We just keep on hammering it uh, from outside the fortress.
Yeah, but that's the thing. When you stop using the hammer to try to make yourself heard and start using the hammer to your own
That's yeah, yeah,
build
yeah,
your own
yeah, yeah,
thing,
yeah.
then things are
I
starting.
think because you're doing this, you're absolutely right. If you're hammering it, then you're seeking power as well, and shouldn't be about seeking power, but building and creating things. Yes, yeah,
That's that's
yeah.
at least
Another
try differently.
narrative. That's
Yes,
the
yes,
narrative we
yes.
need.
Yeah, I mean, if the hammering doesn't work, try to use the
Exactly.
hammer in another way.
Exactly. Like in Minecraft.
Yeah, in Minecraft,
Yeah.
yes.
So I wanted, and I'm going to talk about one of my favorite series now. And reading up on solar punk just came to my mind. And I don't know if there's a question in it or not, and if it's relevant. But in The Last of Us, the series, Joel and Ellie, they find they come across different communities. One is a cannibal community.
Yeah.
The other one is where he finds his brother as well, and they're living in harmony. So this is all juxtaposed, the apocalyptic world that you see in The Last of Us, and then this community, this cannibal community, and then this community where he finds his brother, living in harmony.
Mhm.
So, are these different interpretations of futures that
Well,
one?
it's a very black and white in that sort of narrative. I mean, again, selling fear is very easy, selling. Okay, I give you the zombies, I give you the cannibals, and then I give you an harmonic sort of. These two things are not in related, while uh, this sort of very simplest. It's for me is a sort of simple narrative of black and white, right?
Yeah, yeah,
While we live in a very gray area, where
true, true.
where things are negotiated, where things are sort of compromising.
Yeah,
So let's say we need we cannot reduce the complexity
yeah,
of the world because things are made of shades, uh, are made of sort of mm, political negotiation, which are very
true.
important. Because when the two things polarize, like we are seeing now,
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
the
yes,
the good and the bad. They do not talk to each other, and when they don't talk to each other, the possible outcome is war. It's always been like that. The people that believe that they have the truth,
yeah,
they're often the one
true,
that lie.
true.
So these two things I'm very, doubtful. I prefer those narratives where things are more gray, more subtle,
Yeah,
more complex, and where the solution comes from a negotiation, uh, from giving something and getting something back. Uh, that's the real equilibrium, I think.
true, true. Because like there's all these sayings, one man's hero is another man's villain, and
Yes.
and there are different narratives, and because of these statements, like you said, the polarity is what strengthens or fuels hate, not
Yes.
having empathy, being desensitized.
Yes. It's a sort of it's a very typical Western view that the creation of heroes, like this sort of the idea of you need the hero to solve the problem. Well,
True.
I believe that people can solve the problem
Yes.
by themselves if you give them the power to enter the negotiation. Uh, so yeah, okay, let's see.
Okay. So I want to talk about tech in terms of different futurisms, solar and cyberpunk, because,
Yeah,
again, reading up, I assumed, before that, the assumption has always been gadgets and gizmos and stuff like that. Can you share your view about terms in, sorry, tech in terms of,
yes.
cyberpunk and solarpunk?
Yes. So the paradigm of cyberpunk was low life, high tech. That means that in the narrative, you had a nerd, a geek, someone that had a very good knowledge of information technology, and it was using it to defend himself against the bad guys, right? So you had high tech. High tech meant big computers, mainframes, a lot of cyber surveillance, big data, and these sort of things. Uh, Solarpunk is sort of the opposite. It's more like low tech and high life. That means that introducing values and using the technology at the lowest level of accessibility. That means that if I have a very fancy prosthetic that costs thousands of dollars, just a small population can have it. But if I um, say, stimulate the production of low prosthetic for all the people that jump on a mine or they have a disease and they can function in society and use their arms or legs for good, then I made technology accessible for a vast majority of people. So Solarpunk tries to say, yes, we need to use technology. We are not advocating primitivism, a return to the golden age, which is impossible. We live in this time, and we have to make do with the advantages that technology can give us, because it could be a wonderful thing if you could power the desert with solar panels and then distribute this energy. So what is the current risk is that this sort of narrative is being appropriated by um, the usual capitalistic companies and greenwashing reality, meaning that they will produce solar energy, but nothing will change. The distributor will be the same, and your bill just doesn't change. You were paying energy produced from oil or gas, and now you're paying the bill from the sun, and nothing changed. I mean, you're still a consumer and you're still a user of this technology. I mean, not a user of this technology. It's just a taxpayer anyway. So Solarpunk says, okay, but I have to be able to have my a better condition for me and my family. That means that maybe we should change the way the energy is produced. We should change the way the cities are built. We should change the way the food is distributed. All these big supply chains are being implemented over the last 100 years, not more than that. So with the development of means of transportation, we can have fruits and vegetables shipped uh, from one place to the other of the world. Does that make sense? I mean, does it make sense to have no seasons at all? When I was growing up, there were fruits that I could not eat in the winter, and vegetables that I couldn't eat in the summer. But now I can get anything anywhere real time, and that's not correct, because these costs are hidden costs, and they are dumped onto nature or onto weakest populations. So when it comes to technology, uh, the main the fundamentals are who benefits. So who owns the technology, who develops the technology, and how many people benefit from that? Is it closed technology, is it owned by a copyright, or is it open? Is it free? So that's the fight. The fight is not to have the latest model of of I don't know, the iPhone, which just changes the number of pixel in the camera. The the fight is to have a modular telephone that if the battery breaks, I can change it. If the RAM breaks, I can change it. If the processor is old, I can change it. This sort of open technology can change the structure of power. Um, so that's the thing. That's the sort of change in our mentality, in our attitude. We need to allocate our resources, our spending power into these sort of alternatives, so that technology will go in another direction. I know it's not easy. I'm not selling, uh, a magic solution, but as soon as you are aware of these things, maybe you will, I don't know, start to use a 3D printer to build, uh, I don't know, some repair part that got broken. You will start to apply your knowledge, your wisdom to the things that you can change, instead of blaming, someone that things don't work. Change your attitude, or at least have a community that can support you in these things. Um, I hope I answered the question. It's
No, you've given me a lot of food for thought, actually. And going back to one of the things that you mentioned, that, in your childhood, there were fruits and vegetables that you didn't eat in the summer and didn't eat in the winter. That same way we've done, it is like that. And it reminds me of, another thing, uh, the bees, people's, what we've heard here as well, in the Middle East, that you should, if you want to eat honey, eat the honey of the bees that are living where you're living, because then, they make honey from the pollen of the surrounding areas, and that is good for you because you are living in that area, right?
yes,
So, in the same way, so should we look upon the animal kingdom to change this
yeah,
narrative, and
yes,
again it becomes more sustainable as well.
yes, yes, yes. One of the pillars of solar punk is biomimesis. And for biomimesis, I'm talking about the imitation of nature. Nature took millennia to develop their own structures, modules, shapes, and we can benefit from that, and we can imitate that in a very mimetic style, so that we can sort of take inspiration. It's called sometimes bio-inspired technology, that we can use. And the other side of this is a sort of anti-specism approach, meaning that we inhabit this planet not just because we are the only one to inherit the planet. We are probably the last one to appear. And that doesn't mean that we are the best. It means that we should find an equilibrium with the other species. I'm writing a novel now where many of the animals that were in the forest, on the mountains, are now coming to the city. And of course, we went from a situation where wild animals were, you know, danger, a real danger for us. And we build the cities exactly to defend ourselves so that we can shield our weakest members from wild animals. But then we realized that we lost the connection with nature. We completely separated ourselves in just 200 years. We went from the village to a sprawling megalopolis where I was born in 1973. I don't know the name of trees. I just
Yeah.
don't know the name of trees, but I know a lot of name of brands. So my flora and my fauna has become a flora and a fauna of brands, of things, of products, not of flowers and trees and animals. So we in a way miss this relationship. So very briefly, anti-speciesism says that we're not the only one on this planet, and we should give voice to these entities. And these entities are now ranging from the natural ones to the unnatural ones. So Solarpunk says we should include in the conversation even the the species that at the moment we cannot talk to, but in my novel, for example, AI will help animals to speak so that we can
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
conversation or we can have a dialogue with them, and they will say things that maybe we don't like, but that we have to listen to if we want to live together on this planet. Otherwise, of course, we are the dominant species and we can destroy this planet. But I don't think in the long term we will benefit that.
True. Absolutely true. So my last question to you, and I'm quoting Wikipedia. um, some, like solarpunk researchers Adam Flynn, worry that solarpunk can risk being greenwashed
Yeah.
through aesthetics that give the appearance of sustainability without addressing the root causes
Yes.
of actual environmental issues. Flynn notes how depictions such as luxury condos with a green roof that